but we take careful accounting for all that.
I'm not
Trying to
doubting
find
that
a way.
everything's accounted for, I'm saying that it's not presented in a way that an average, a non-accountant can look at and say, oh, that's what the budget for the police building was. Oh, it came in, the bid was under budget, that's good. So now we have bond funds, or we have tax that we had allocated, oh, this is how we're paying for that project. I mean, and I just think that would make it easier for us to track over time. So, I mean, we could, I'm not saying, so, all the, like, bunch of little things, like $50,000 or less, I don't think they each need to have their own project budget, but, major things certainly do, and I think the big pieces of equipment,
Well, I think one
Would
of
be
the,
worthwhile
one of
too.
the things that might be a distinguishing factor are those projects that are gonna span more than a one-year period.
That's what I was gonna say about the vehicles, is because the
Yeah.
vehicles
Or
tend
typically,
to be ordered in one year, delivered in another, or there's delay, or,
there's risk of that, yeah.
so,
But when you're
things
doing
that are-
engineering for the roads program, for
Right.
example, a lot of the engineering for next year's road program was done in 2017,
yeah.
prior to deciding to shift resources for that project to other things. Then we have money in 2019 for the wrap-up of that. And then we got construction costs in 2020. So, again, when we come forth with requests to issue bonds to actually pay for that, you will see the aggregate of those numbers, but not all of that will be spent in 2020. Some of that has been committed already.
Right, but it'd be good to see the entire project budget somewhere.
Yeah,
In one-
absolutely.
In
and I
one
will-
place. And when we issue bonds, it's not just for that, it's also for all these other things, so it's, so it's like, and anyway, I do
No,
wanna
I
spend
agree.
some time
I
talking
understand.
about the fiscal note,
Sure.
so, you gave us two options here, is that,
So this is where we left off from earlier this, well, I still say the spring, last time we came up. We were looking to create more of a checklist format for the, and I've got hard copies too, printed if you wanna just glance at a hard copy. If you would pass one down.
I got
So we added the, combination of some samples that were provided, so we added 3 narrative sections at the top. What is the action item? What's the fiscal summary, and what's the operational impact? And then we have a number of check boxes for, how this fiscal note compares to budget. So it's either within budget, it's the top section, then you have that middle section, it's gonna exceed budget, or was not contemplated. If it's not contemplated, how are we going to fund it, right? And then we've got a bottom section that talks about future impacts, which is kind of tying to that operational impact narrative on the top. So the idea is to provide additional clarity when items come up for approval at the board. Again, what general ledger is, what is the budget amount, what are we approving as far as the contract or purchase, and where does it stand within the scope of the budget, and again, if it's anticipated to exceed the budget, where are those revenues gonna come from to cover that. In some cases, like the sidewalk program for this year, our special assessments are higher than we budgeted for, but our costs are up as well.
there's
So-
2 pages in the packet, are they the same thing, or are they two different?
It should only be this one page.
Okay, okay, I thought they were two
There's
different
one dated
things.
12/2, and then there's the April one.
Oh, I
Same.
apologize, they're the same thing, I just renamed the file.
Got it, okay. I thought they were
Great.
different.
Yeah,
So is
no,
this-
they're the same thing.
Okay.
This is for when you come in with a contract for approval, is this gonna be, or is this every time some line shifts, you gotta,
Well, again, anything that requires board approval
okay,
would be accompanied by a fiscal note.
okay.
And I think that's a reasonable request, and again, the feedback I've heard is that fiscal notes vary greatly depending on who's preparing them.
Right.
And it doesn't always give the context within the budget for that clarity of, you know, yes, we understand you're within
Okay.
budget, you're over budget, but revenues are gonna be more because we got another grant for green alleys, you know,
Right.
that wasn't contemplated in the original budget.
Okay.
Or, you know, or we expect something else to be under budget, so again, per your previous comments, this would say, well, we're acknowledging this is gonna come in under budget, or we're gonna put it off, or whatever the case may be. And then the board would have an opportunity as presented to accept that and approve it, or
Mhm.
weigh in on other alternatives if you would so choose.
So in the packet would be the memo, you know, let's say it's to approve a contract, the fiscal note impact, and then sort of the information, the additional information, so the contract or the RFP or whatever, maybe that is the thought, is that, that's.
The
how it
thought
would work.
is that this would effectively replace the subsection
At the bottom of the memo.
in the bottom of the
Yeah,
memo
okay.
with a whole separate action sheet
Okay.
just on fiscal.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
For
I mean, I
anything
think,
that has to be
what's
approved by the board.
GL number, like that,
General ledger number, again, a lot of times I've heard, well, what general ledger number is, what account is that coming from? And for
Mhm.
example, that's a general ledger number, that's the account.
I mean, my feeling is, that we could shorten this, like, the fiscal summary, like, this is the estimated cost, is it budgeted, yes or no? If it's budgeted, I mean, do we need to know, like, exactly where in the budget it's budgeted? I just wanna know if it's in the budget or not. If it's in the
We did.
budget and we budgeted for it, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, well, that's a checkbox right here, the first checkbox, and it tells you where it is.
Where it is, what line.
If that's the only checkbox that's checked, none of the others will apply.
I just feel like it can be simplified. That's,
Okay,
You might have multiple, and if you're buying some, like cost reductions from other items
Yeah.
might be from multiple sources, multiple GL accounts.
well, it's possible, I would, at some point challenge staff with that we would have to have a additional discussion about that, if we're talking about collecting up tidbits per se.
Right, yeah.
Because my recommendation would be then, I mean, if we're collecting tidbits, then it's really just gonna come from reserves. You know, and the tidbits will fall to reserves, and it should generally, you know, again, we would have a full discussion on that, but
so the cost will exceed the current budget amount versus the cost was not contemplated, so like the pool books being twice the cost would be, it's exceeding the
That's
current
correct.
budget amount.
Budget amount. The budget amount in that is the new amount or the original?
no, the budget amount is the budget amount.
Okay,
Again, the cost is gonna be in the fiscal summary, what's the cost?
oh,
And then those three check boxes, depending on which one of the two you check in the middle section,
Okay.
you have to check one of the other three, which is why
okay. They're separate, okay, 3 boxes.
they're part of that middle section, and then it talks about how you cover the excess or the cost that was not contemplated.
Okay,
And again, my goal is to try to make a standard form that can be used for any variety, and then getting staff and others accustomed to how
yeah,
it comes together.
I mean, to me, it's sufficient to say, is it budgeted? Yes. I don't, I mean.
If it's budgeted, though, it doesn't necessarily have to come before the board.
Yeah, unless it's a contract or something that we're approving, because
Yeah,
we're
well,
approving
yeah,
otherwise.
contract, you're right, I take that back.
Right.
Not for equipment.
Right, not for equipment or approved capital purchase, but yeah. So, so if something is not, so this is actually budget,
It's within budget, it's just the first checkbox, that's all you do, and then you're done. And you stop.
no, you're not, cause you have to put the general ledger and what the amount in the budget is. I don't know, I feel like this is a lot for every single item that comes to us. I mean, I'm not sure, I think it depends what information we really feel like we need to have. Like for me, if it's budgeted, it's within the budget, that's all I need to know. I'm not getting to that level of detail of, exactly what account it's in. I think department heads should have the ability to move stuff around
I
if they
think
need to.
department heads understand that. But staff has also heard on many occasions over the last 2 years, the reference to wanting to have the information of what GL account
I
the
don't recall,
expenditure is coming
one
from.
person who may be interested at that level of detail.
Mhm.
I personally am not.
It does document where you're funded. I mean, if we are gonna hold people to budgets
I'm all
by
for
this,
simplification, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong, but this is not extra work for staff.
Yeah,
Staff
it's not.
already knows this information, they don't have to look it up.
Right.
Again, it's just reference material for, so it's really at
I
your
just,
discretion.
because we'll hear, oh, this is extra staff time and we can't,
No,
it's
this is,
taking up
this
so
is
much
basic
extra.
stuff.
This is a lot of information to fill out. This is a like somewhat detailed form. Not to mention the future impacts, like someone would really have to sit and think, what is that gonna mean? And
Well-
we're always hearing, how overburdened everybody
But-
is, so
but
I'm
if you
sensitive
recall-
to putting extra work on people.
Thank you. If you recall though, most of the capital requests have operational impact
Mhm.
narratives when they're applicable. So that work is already done,
Right, so
it
we
just
don't
has
need
to
it
be
here.
referenced.
So we don't need
I
it
would-
here.
Defer to your discretion on that, absolutely.
Well, one thing like this future impacts, I mean, this is just a couple numbers where like when we bought the ticketing Duncan system, there was whole analysis, you're gonna get rid of the clerk, we still need that high level analysis.
But for example, if you want to buy an agenda management software system, future impact is gonna be $8,000 a year ongoing service contract
Right,
fees
that's-
added to the budget, right?
Right,
I mean, this is not, again, we're not micro time analysis. We tried that with big items and had limited success with that. We certainly wouldn't attempt that level of analysis for modest changes, but we know for sure that there's gonna be an ongoing service contract with this, or some other or maybe it's going to be, uses less material, so it'll be a materials cost savings if you're
Maybe
talking.
that should be more open-ended, like,
Mhm.
please describe,
Yeah,
any
Any future
impact,
impact.
positive or negative, to future operational costs, and then that gives the flexibility to do a whole analysis,
You could do
or
that.
just something very simple, or,
I like the check boxes that could go up, not the numbers, but just future increase and then have like software annual costs or some, and then possible decrease half a clerk, just so there's some framework.
but I think keeping it open-ended allows people to
Right.
just have the ability to,
Say what.
yeah.
Because
you
they
But it
know,
may
also
not
introduces
know.
variability between projects and staff people preparing the notes. So, again, just as long as there's an acknowledgement that that is one of the trade-offs to,
Because, I do think for
Open-ended.
future impacts, it's just hard to know, like,
I
you
agree.
might not know that.
well, aren't you gonna review all of these?
no, that's a staff. Department heads are responsible for their own fiscal.
And is this going to full board at the next meeting, or?
No, this is just, we're picking up, this has been on the shelf as we work through other things. I can certainly try to, really the biggest thing is,
I think for like future impacts, you could have still the 3 check boxes and just below the second 2, just have a space to write. And the GL and the increase and the decrease, like, you may not know that it's gonna be $8,000 a year for software and yada yada, like, just some, you know, I mean, cause that's also an opportunity for us to discuss as a board, what, you know, what do you foresee? Is it that there's gonna be half a clerk, you know, I
Right.
don't know, you know, so
Right.
having that it would just be a way to sort of spark the conversation and make it seem a little bit, it would just make it a little simpler.
Well, keep in mind, there's a whole memo that's gonna accompany all these too. So, again, you
Right.
know, it's just, and staff in general is interested in having a fixed process from which to respond and prepare for. So, you know, I'm flexible on this. Again, I know there's a lot of check boxes and numbers. This, it's done, it's easy for staff to do this. If you don't want the references, if you'd like to bring it back for another meeting
Yeah,
and
let's just
continue, we
schedule
can
it the
certainly
next meeting, because we
do
gotta
that.
go.
Plus, then you have maybe a little more time to, if you wanna reach out and give some suggestions, I'm happy to post it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a little concerned that staff, because they're all each gonna have their own, like, thought process about it. I mean, I'm not sure, like, I mean, I think you're gonna need to at least, like, spot check that they're doing them the same way.
Well,
Or like Peter, I don't think
We're gonna
Peter,
move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
second, all in favor? I mean, like Peter doesn't really come with very many items, you know what I mean? Leanne is gonna know that Peter and Sarah and other department heads don't really do this that much, so.
no, I understand. I say the biggest challenge for me is getting this stuff 12 hours before the packets go out and we start to do reviewing fiscal notes is the challenge for going forward. Do you want to do the